Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Monday's edition, and we're broadcasting from beautiful Irvine, California. Happy to have you with us today as we continue to count votes. Can you believe it, folks? We're 6 days out past the election and we're still counting votes. It's amazing to me. There hasn't been any indication of any improprieties. It's just taking a long time. So let's get into it. I'm going to do my final sort of post-mortem on what happened last Tuesday. We're going to talk a little bit about issues, candidates, where we go. But let's start with this. Through all of the billions of dollars that got spent on this campaign, think about this. Not one incumbent senator lost. Now, we have one in a runoff in Georgia, Raphael Warnock against Herschel Walker. But not a single incumbent senator got beat. Now, you had Pennsylvania flip, but that's because we had a Republican senator retire. So, yeah, that was a flip seat for the Democrats, which right now leaves them +1. But at the end of the day, that's what happened in the Senate races. I know we were projected to come close in a few, win a few, didn't happen. I get it. So at the end of the day, we're either going to have a 51-49 Senate or a 50-50 Senate. Either way, Democrats are in control. Let me tell you a little bit about the money aspect of this thing, because it's really crazy. We lost these two races. In Pennsylvania, we got outspent $68 million to $35 million. Now, is that worth 3 points that Oz got beat by Fetterman? We'll never know. Also in that race, I hear a lot of people saying, well, Oz wasn't a great candidate. That's BS. Oz got more votes. In other words, the governor that ran, was a far right-wing candidate, he lost by 12 points. Oz lost by 3. I mean, basically, Oz outperformed somewhere from 9 to 10%. Now, on the money side in Arizona, Blake Masters got outspent 3-1, $30 million to $10 million. So, on the aggregate money piece, aggregately, Republicans were outspent at least 2-1. Now, the answer to that is, okay, well, if you're outspent 2-1, go out and raise more money next time. But at the end of the day, in the United States Senate, not one incumbent was defeated. And one thing we're ourselves here at Schaftlein Report and virtually every pundit across the country missed, inflation was the top issue, 31%. That's been pretty well decided. But the abortion issue came up second at 27%, and it was the top issue for 2/3 of Democrats, 66%. We missed that one. So, before everybody starts burying the Republican Party, now I've seen a lot of stuff come out here. Oh, it's Trump's fault, it's McConnell's fault. No, come on. And we had bad candidates, a litany of reasons. At the end of the day, the Senate is where the Senate was. Yeah, it could be 50-50, it could be 51-49. Either way, with Democrats in control, it still takes 60 votes to get something done, and the big difference is, which we'll get into later in the show, Republicans are likely, but not guaranteed to take the House. Now, where did Republicans do better and where did they do worse? Well, I think it's fair to say Republicans gained significantly among Latino voters. Everybody thinks, well, Republicans won Latinos. No, we didn't win Latinos. We lost by 21 points. Compare that to 2018. Republicans were -40. So they picked up 19%. And most of that were working class Latinos who broke towards Republicans. That's a favorable demographic, folks, because Latinos are the fastest growing demographic in the country. The other thing that came out of the election post-mortem, and this is not good for Biden or the Democrats, but 67% of voters, all voters, across Republican, Democrat, Independent, do not want Biden to run in 2024. So it almost seems to me the election was, to say it was a referendum on Biden, which a lot of us thought it would happen, that simply wasn't the case. Most of it was candidate driven. Most of it was local issues or state issues. I've heard a few Republicans say, well, Mark, the abortion issue wasn't that big. Yeah, it was too. You know, aggregately, a lot of Republicans who signed legislation, they still won, but that's because they did a lot of other good things. But when the red flag comes up and the president says he's going to do nothing different, you know, folks, as we look forward to 2024, if Biden is the nominee, you know, he will be an 80-year-old nominee. And 2/3 of voters right now do not want him to run. So, again, lots of real estate to cover between now and then. But that's what it showed. Also, and again, I'm not a Trump apologist. I mean, Donald Trump was a huge negative for the Republican Party. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but that's how I see it in the numbers. And the former president actually looked pathetic attacking Ron DeSantis and Glenn Youngkin, the governors of Florida and Virginia, respectively. Ronald Reagan used to have a rule, thou shalt not talk ill about a fellow Republican. Boy, Trump should have gone to school on that. I mean, he really looks pathetic attacking these two successful governors. And as we've said on the show, it is our opinion on this show, we do not want President Trump to run. If he wins the nomination, we'll support him. But we have many other candidates who we would rather see as our nominee as we look forward rather than looking backward. And that's not going to be popular among a certain part of the base of the Republican Party, but that's how we see it. Now, Democratic voters under the age of 30, voters under the age of 30, they broke for Democrats by 28 points. That is a massive showing. Well, look, for all we criticize the Biden administration, you know, for being idiots, they're dumb, they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing. They pushed this student loan forgiveness thing, even though the courts have blocked it. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason he won voters under 30, but 28 points is a massive swing. They have been tending to go Democrat over the last couple elections. Voters under the age of 45 broke for Democrats by 13 points. However, voters over 45 broke to Republicans by 10. Now, let's get into those a little bit here. You know, the younger demographic is getting larger, not smaller. And although they didn't vote any more in this election than previous ones, their votes were concentrated. And when you have that type of gain, folks, that's a tough one. Now, again, our base generally voted. I know Rick Scott said, well, our base didn't show. That's not totally true. At the end of the day, Republicans won 5 million more votes than Democrats did, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So again, young people didn't turn out for Republicans. Under 45 won by Democrats, over 45 won by Republicans. And then, you know, you looked at the undecided voters. And we generally thought those would break for Republicans. Generally, if you're undecided, you don't end up voting for the party in power. That didn't happen. There were about 8% of voters that were undecided going into the election. More of them broke towards Democrats, folks. And where we thought we could win a majority of the independents, as, quote, polling suggested, depending upon how the final count came out, it's like there's a 1-point difference. Either Democrats 50.5, 49.5. That really is exit polling within the margin of error. So basically, we'll call it a tie between the independents. Half Republican, half Democrat. That's not good. typically Republicans will win about 55% of the independents. So when you add that up and then couple it, there were some redistricting issues out there. Think about it. We won 5 million more votes for Congress. In the 2020 election, we were 3% under the Democrats. But in this election, we won 5 million more votes. And yet, it looks like we're barely going to hold on to the House of Representatives. The Associated Press and NBC News right now are projecting that it's going to be a 219, 216 House of Representatives. One group has us 220, 215. Heck, one has it 218, 217. But it looks like if the leads stand and things play out the way they're looking, 219, 216. I'll tell you one thing, caused a lot of grief with the mainstream media. The NBC News polling group had it pretty damn accurate. On election night, they said, this is on election night. They said, well, it looks like it's going to be tight, but 219, 216. That hasn't changed. So, that's where the House is currently projected to be. So at the end of the day, if that plays out, and it still could go either way, folks. Okay, there's nothing baked in stone yet. So it does look like we're going to have, depending upon who wins Georgia, if Herschel wins, it's 50-50 and Democrats are in control. If Warnock wins, it's 51-49, Democrats control the Senate. And if it turns out 219, 216, 218, 217, 220, 215 in that range, we'll stick with 219, 216 right now. Very closely divided House. Now, what's really got me ticked off this morning is a lot of Freedom Caucus, the most conservative of conservative Republicans, are saying they're not going to support McCarthy for Speaker. That's the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard. Republicans picked up like 14 seats in the 2020 election when Biden was elected president. They're going to pick up a few more here in this one. They're going to go from a negative down 5 to maybe up anywhere from 3 to 5. So over the course of 2 elections, McCarthy's done a damn good job. He's raised money. He's put the party in a position out to, albeit it's close, but they're still look like they're going to win 219, 216. And for a situation where we need to come together as a party, for the most conservative members of the Freedom Coalition to say they're not going to vote for McCarthy, this is ridiculous. He has the overwhelming support of the majority of the Republicans. What we do not need is a handful of Freedom Coalition members not voting for McCarthy. I know they want to negotiate and get some things, and some of the stuff they're advocating I agree with. Like allowing time for members to read a bill before it's voted on seems pretty reasonable to me. But this idea of vacating the Speaker's chair on any time there's a vote, I don't like that at all. You have to have a strong Speaker. And I think McCarthy's done a damn good job. So no, I'm not in favor of what the most conservative members of the House Freedom Caucus are doing. Heck, one of their leaders, Jim Jordan, said he's supporting McCarthy. I like Jim Jordan a lot. He's a real practical guy. But to come out here and try to put other names forward, this is problems we have. I mean, it's a good example. Like up in the Alaska House race, we had 2 Republicans going at it throat to each other's throat. And now we're likely to lose that race to a Democrat. I mean, it's just insane. This Republican on Republican fighting has got to stop. So I hope common sense will prevail and the Freedom Caucus members who are generally backed by Donald Trump, who is supporting McCarthy, will come to their senses and back McCarthy so we don't come out of the gate with a split House. Pelosi was smart. You may not like her, but she was able to effectively, for the most part, control the Democratic caucus. And bear in mind, you had all those far left-wing radical kooks, the AOCs, the Ileana Presleys, Bowman, You had that group, the squad group. Pelosi still got them together to vote when she needed it. So hopefully, again, people will get behind Kevin McCarthy and some semblance of governance can overtake the Republican Party. We do not need to have these squabbles at this point. And this leads me to my next point. Look at what happened with Republican governors. New Hampshire, John Sununu. Texas, Greg Abbott. Georgia, Brian Kemp, and obviously DeSantis in Florida. Huge wins by good governing. You know, in 3 of those 4 states, all 4 really, they ended up in double-digit margins, just short in Georgia with Kemp. But I mean, Sununu won by double digits. Texas, just under 10%. Florida, you already know, DeSantis pounded by 19. And Georgia, Kemp won against, the Democrats' favorite, Stacey Abrams. So, I think the message part of that is, if you govern properly, you can win huge. And that's what happened in those states. But make no mistake about it, folks, the 2020 and 2022 Democratic coalition, they came through. College-educated women were huge for Democrats. We've already talked about the young voters. Yes, we picked up a great deal of Hispanic voters. Not quite as many as we thought, but we made really good gains. Same thing for African-American voters. So, like anything else, what was the message the American people were saying? It's somewhat muddled, but I think most people were saying, hey, we want good governance. We don't want people on the political fringe left or the political fringe right. The vast majority of Americans, we thought probably 70%, it's actually closer, 75% are in that center left or center right. So to the degree that you can govern effectively towards that group, look, with a divided government, you've got a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate, likely a razor-thin Republican House. There's going to have to be some coming together to get things done for the American people. Now, one other thing that's really bugging me. Western states, Arizona, California, Nevada, they've got to improve the speed of how they vote count. Otherwise, the elections, this election appears to be clean, but for the vast majority of Americans, it is important for the idea of election integrity. Here we're a week out, and we still have votes to count predominantly in those 3 states. They're not the only offenders. There are some others. But, Arizona, come on. California's got mail-in ballots. I mean, maybe state laws need to be adjusted, but ballots should have to be in by Election Day. I think California allows it as long as it's postmarked by Election Day, which is why they're so slow to count. But we really, in these states, and some others to a degree, need to improve. If you can look at states like Florida, Georgia, you had all the results in. I could go up and down the line. But it's important. These states really need to improve on the speed of which they're counting. There hasn't been any malfeasance, none alleged, and none seen. But just for the integrity of it, it would be helpful for, again, it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, Independent, get these votes counted quicker. All right. We're going to follow these election results as they come in this week, on both the Arizona governor's race and there's still about 20 House seats that are up in the air right now. That number's dwindling each day. We had another one, a Republican flip overnight. But again, as these numbers get adjusted, we'll adjust accordingly. Right now, Republicans are at 212. Magic number's 218. So that their path to victory is there. Now let's talk about some things that have happened here. This is good news. We talked about it briefly last week, but a federal judge in Texas has halted the Biden student loan forgiveness plan. Now, what's it going to mean? Probably at the end of the day, it may make it up to the Supreme Court. We don't know. But we said on this show numerous times before the election that was an illegal program. Congress has the power of the purse strings. And, Democrats still have the House and the Senate and through the lame duck session. If they want to codify this, have them pass it legislatively. My bet is they don't, because they want the issue. They actually don't, probably want to pass it. So, we're in the camp that if Congress votes to forgive those debts, fine. If it's passed in Congress, signed by the president, but this should not be done by executive order, and we think the judge was right. Now, we typically on Monday, we talk about what's happened, crime waves across the country, and Chicago's always the poster child, but they're never alone. Again, 27 people shot, 5 killed in Chicago over the weekend, but we had 2 horrific killings, folks. 4 students at the University of Idaho found murdered over the weekend, and just today news broke 3 Virginia football players killed by a former player. I mean, we hate reporting stories like this. Oh my, it's just horrific news. And it seems to go on more and more in this country. So unfortunately, we're reporting it. We're sad to do so. But there's a lot of troubled people out there, folks, and a lot of violence. And, we weren't just talking about it, as a campaign issue prior to the election, but now these elections are over. We really hope, particularly in areas where you have these district attorneys trying to let people out, no bail laws. I mean, we hope that some of these crime issues can be dealt with on a bipartisan basis, because it's not every week, folks, we report these things, and we hate saying it, but just every week it's the same story over and over. If we don't report it, you're going to say, well, hey, what happened? Nothing happened. Must be getting better. No, it continues to happen. But we'll always remain optimistic here. So let's summarize again where we are. Democrats have the Senate. Republicans on a path, looks like, to win the House. Hopefully McCarthy is elected Speaker. The Republicans are going to vote in the Senate, I think, Wednesday. There have been 6 or 7 Republicans said we should delay the vote until after the Walker election. Others, at Trump's urging, are pushing McConnell not to get reelected. It's our bet here that Mitch McConnell will be reelected as leader of the Republicans in the Senate, as rightfully he should be. Because he takes a lot of arrows, but he's done a heck of a good job for Republicans. And we on this show support Mitch McConnell to be reelected. So that's it for today, folks. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully we get some more of these results in and we can give you some firmer numbers as we speak. Keep your head up. Be optimistic. We still think we have 2 governing parties in this country. We may disagree adamantly with the politics on the Democratic side and agree with our side, but right now you've got 2 houses divided, and there's going to have to be some coming together for any legislation to get done. All right, thanks for viewing. Thanks for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll keep you informed. We'll cut through the propaganda. And as always, see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.